All right, guys, welcome back to the Steroid Bootcamp Part 19. We're running through this, okay? Part 19 is very important. Planning your next cycle and time off guidelines, how to run sustainable cycles. So this is what you're going to do next. After the whole first cycle is done, planning for the next one. This is where the real gains are made, as mentioned in the last part of the camp. Now we have two left, okay? These are both some of the most important sections. I know I say that every goddamn time. Every section's important. This one's very important if you actually want to get gains for the next cycle and how to properly recover all that shit. So let's go ahead and hop right into this. Let me make sure that we're all good here. Boom. Perfect. All right. So planning your next cycle and time off guidelines, how to run sustainable cycles. So first off here, we're going to go over why time off matters. This is very, very crucial. So full hormonal recovery prevents long-term suppression and health risks. That's why you have to do a post-cycle therapy after your first blast. If you don't give a fuck, okay? I don't think you should do this regardless, but when you're more intermediate / advanced, that's when you blast and cruise because you don't give a fuck about hormonal recovery at that point. You have come to terms with taking TRT for life, with taking testosterone for the rest of your life just to maintain stable hormone values. But if you do want to recover, you don't want to jab your ass with a needle for the rest of your life. You want to prioritize hormonal recovery after your first blast. And when you take time off, that allows your body to fully rebound, bounce back, and get back to that initial point that it was at prior to hopping on, okay? It does prevent long-term suppression and health risks. The longer you're on, the more risks you run into, obviously, okay? So time off allows natural tests to stabilize and sensitivity to compounds. So you always want to cruise. You never just want to take a blast year-round, okay? A lot of pros do this shit. Okay, if you're an Olympia caliber competitor, you got to do what you got to do. You're maintaining a insane amount of muscle mass. So yes, you're going to have to push a lot more gear to maintain that shit year round. But you still want to cruise off. You want to cruise off, take TRT, or just come off completely. This brings sensitivity back to the compounds. If you take certain compounds at high doses for a very long time, your body gets used to it. Okay, it's not as sensitive. You're not going to get the results you want to see. There's a diminishing effect the longer you take compounds for at a high dose. You want to come off so you retain that sensitivity to the compound. So when you hop back on, right, it's going to hit really goddamn hard as opposed to just staying on forever. Where your body will lack sensitivity to the compounds and you will not see the same results as opposed to coming off, allowing your body to regain that sensitivity, then getting back on. You'll see a lot better results doing it this way. Okay, so minimum of 8 to 12 weeks off equals time on plus PCT for beginner cycles. The main rule of thumb is to come off for the same amount of time that you were on. This is a general rule of thumb. It is a safe rule of thumb to follow. But it very heavily depends on your bloods. Okay, if you are on for 3 months, okay, you come off for 3 months, but your bloods are still not back to normal. They should be. If they're not, you did something wrong. But if they're not, you of course can't get back on a cycle until everything's back to normal. If your bloods get back to normal way before that, okay, way before that 3 month time span, 1.5 months, 2 months, then you might be able to hop on a little earlier, but it's all dependent on your labs, okay? And allowing your body that time to recover just to make sure you're not straining your body, putting it through unnecessary stress and running into long-term consequences from doing that, okay? Rushing cycles leads to diminished returns, higher sides, and burnout. This is another big thing, okay? It's not just a risk of running into more sides and long-term consequences, also the diminished returns because of that sensitivity, okay? Your body gets used to pushing the compounds. You're not going to have that sensitivity, and then you're just going to have to keep upping the dose to see some type of return, and that just overall is a negative. The cons outweigh the pros at that point, okay? You're just going to run into nothing but sides. You're going to keep pushing it for a diminished return. Sustainable approach. 1 to 2 cycles per year max for most users. Now, this is for most new users, okay? If you are planning to do this and take it the long way, if you want a physique like fucking Jeff Seed here, you're going to have to push maybe 3-4 cycles a year, right? But 1 to 2 cycles per year is a really good time span if you're new, right? So you hop on for 3-4 months. You take the time off 3-4 months and then you hop back on another one. That's going to equal about a year for 2 cycles, right? If you are just trying to hop on 1 cycle, that's completely fine. You hop on a cycle, come off, allow your body that time to rebound, recover, and then maybe hop on another one the year after. It's very dependent on your goals, what you're trying to do, how you want your physique to look, and how your labs look, okay? There isn't like a specific amount of cycles you take per year for max results. It's very genetically dependent. Some people can take one cycle, look like a goddamn god afterwards, and they don't need another cycle. They just take a cycle, come off, that's it. Okay. Some people will need more. It's very genetically dependent. So next up, here's assessing recovery before your next cycle. Blood work is mandatory. You want to confirm your tests, LH and FSH, lipids, and liver are in range. So again, all blood dependent, all based on your labs. You want to make sure LH and FSH are back in range, your luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone. These are the values that are dictating your natural hormone production, as mentioned in the previous sector of the camp. You want these back up into range, and you want them to be into range after the PCT is done. Your lipids, you want these back in range. Your liver, your kidneys, you want all these values back in range. You don't want anything stressed before you get back on. Your test, of course, has to be in range. Okay, when you're off, anywhere between, I'd say like 500, 600, 700 is a great point to be at naturally. If you're below that, like 300, 400, 200, you may want to consider TRT for life, because that's borderline hypogonadal. If you're that low test values, that's pretty normal to see nowadays in society would test that low. But if it is that low, consider TRT. Okay, you want it to be between that 500, 600, 700. Just to give you a goddamn reference range, back in the day, 100, 200 years ago, male natural test levels were at like over 1,000 naturally. Okay, because of all the shit that's being pushed nowadays, consumer mentalities, all the shit that's in your food, all the shit that you're taking just on a normal basis that you're unaware of, it's reducing testosterone values. That's why it's very rare to see a high test male naturally nowadays. It sucks. I know it's unfortunate, but that's just the reality of the situation. So you do want to make sure that this is in range, of course, to just actively perform as a male in the optimal range. You got to make sure your test is in fucking range naturally, okay? You want to wait until your natural levels hit 80 to 100% of pre-cycle baseline. Evaluate gains, retention. Stable weight and strength for 4+ weeks is very crucial. Mental check. Full motivation and libido restored without aids. This is very important. Make sure that you're not feeling fatigued. You're not feeling low motivated, like low motivation, low discipline, before hopping on again, okay? After the PCT, you should be just operational normally as a male. You should easily be able to get out of bed. You should not have any issues in bed with your girl, okay? You should not have any problems. If you do, it's a sign that there's something going wrong, and you want to make sure this is back to normal, okay? Physical signs as well, no persistent fatigue, joint pain, or acne, very important. Now, next up here, your time off duration guidelines. So for your first cycle, your time on plus your post-cycle therapy times 1.5, okay? Example, 12 weeks on plus 4 PCT equals 24 weeks off. So this is, again, that general rule of thumb. You want to be off the same amount of time that you were on. So if you're 12 weeks on, 4 weeks PCT, okay, you want generally around 24 weeks off. This is a general rule of thumb, just to make sure that you're good and you're not pushing yourself past that point that you should be on for. Just gonna make sure you're not rushing back into shit. Patience is a virtue in this game, and you do want to make sure you're following this general rule of thumb. But again, it really comes down to your labs, right? Intermediate time on plus PCT times 1, minimum 12 to 16 weeks off, general rule of thumb. Advanced, time on plus PCT times 0.75, but never under 8 weeks, okay? For blast and cruise alternatives, it's for more intermediate / advanced users, only for experience with constant monitoring, okay? This is that point. Once again, I really need to make this clear. When you blast and cruise, you're basically telling yourself that you are going to get shut down. That's why this is for experienced users, people that have that mentality. Okay, they've already gone through the initial steps. They've post-psychotherapy. They know they want to do this for the long haul, or they just had low natural T before they fucking hopped on, right? At that point, it might be a good alternative to blast and cruise. If you are going to be doing this for a long period of time, it's less harsh on lipids. PCTs are toxic. Okay, and for people that need TRT in the first place, okay, my testosterone was decent. It's like 400, 500 natural, but that's not the optimal range to be in. So I am taking TRT for life. A lot of guys should be taking TRT for life. It's not a bad thing to do this, but you have to understand this is a long-term decision. When you decide to do this, you're taking this shit for life. You will be jabbing a needle in your ass for life. And if you decide that you ever want to stop, it's going to be very difficult to rebound back to your natural baseline. So just keep this in mind, please. You want to factor life events as well. Add extra weeks for stress, illness, or travel. Very important, okay? Just Look at this like a chess game. You want to plan in advance. Do not just do shit on the go. Plan in advance. Be data driven, and you're going to win. Okay. Now, bridging periods productively is another important part here. You want to focus on natural progression, push PRs without enhancements. Okay. Experiment with training. Try new splits or weak point specialization is important too. You want to optimize nutrition always. Fine-tune macros for recomp or lean bulks and build habits. Consistent sleep supplementation and tracking is very fucking important. Your habits are everything, okay? If you're not building your habits, you are losing. You need to do this consistently. You need to track your data consistently. You need to get your labs consistently, sleep consistently, hit the diet consistently, train consistently. That's the only way you win, and those are your habits, okay? You're programming your mind to do this. This is all programming. Your first cycle is programming. It's just getting in the habit of doing this shit the right way, because if you get used to doing stuff the wrong way, you don't get your labs, you push shit haphazardly, you're running the wrong goddamn compounds, you're not tracking data. This builds bad habits, and it's going to be hard to break them, okay? Once you build a habit, it is difficult to break. You now have to reverse engineer and reprogram your brain to rebuild a habit that you could have just done from the get-go. So build your habits from the start, and you're going to have a very smooth sailing experience with this. If you build the wrong habits, it's going to be difficult. You will run into consequences, right? Now, optional natural boosters as well. Consistent training, high protein, and recovery. Important too, okay? Now, designing your next cycle smarter. You want to review your past cycle. This is where the data comes in. Data-driven, be data-driven. Log sides, gains, and blood work for adjustments. Very fucking important. You want all this in front of you. Always, okay, throughout this cycle, during the post-cycle therapy, when you come off, to review everything during your next cycle. You want to be able to look back on what you did prior to see, okay, where did I fuck up? What did I do wrong? What am I genetically prone to? Okay, you're going to have all of this shit lined up. What did I react to well with training, with my diet? What did I react to when I took this dose of test? When I took this aromatase inhibitor? What did I feel mentally when my E2 was here, when my prolactin was here? Okay, you're going to be able to see everything the way it was when you track your mental state, your body, how you are reacting physically, your labs, your everything, bro. It's going to be in front of you. That's why you have to be data driven. It's really the only way to do this. And that's why I keep mentioning this shit over and over, because I really need you guys to do this in order to properly run your first cycle and to have a good experience with your enhancement journey in general, right? Now, you want to increase your doses gradually. Do not just fucking bump it up 2x, 3x. That's a very bad idea. Always bump it up like 20 to 50% max from your previous, if tolerated. That's why you always start with your lowest, most effective dosing. Always start with the lowest, most effective dose. What'll happen if you push a high dose is you run into sides. Nothing goes wrong if you start with a low dose. You may run into sides. You most definitely will run into sides when you're new, but it's going to be at a very lower scale as opposed to taking a high dose. There's nothing bad about starting low and working your way up. That's the only way to do it. You start high and you work your way down, you're going to run into a lot of consequences. Okay. So start low, work your way up 20 to 50% dose increases at a time, and you're going to have a really good time here. Okay. And you're going to avoid a lot of goddamn sides that you would run into if you just push a high dose first. You want to rotate compounds as well. Avoid the same stack to prevent tolerance. That's why on a lot of advanced cycles, intermediate cycles, with my clients, I do get specific cycles set up where they're taking, let's say like test NPP EQ. Okay, they're going to switch out the NPP. They might take Anadrol or some shit midway through, or D-ball. D-ball is a horrific compound. I actually don't put any of my clients on this shit, but it's good to switch up compounds. You don't just want to take the same compounds for a long period of time. You want to switch this shit to prevent that tolerance. Okay, if you get a tolerance to a compound, you're not going to see the same amount of gains. You want to keep switching shit. You never want to get used to taking a specific compound for a long period of time. That's when you can run into tolerance effects, okay? And you won't get the same results as you would if you're switching compounds. Now, you want to shorten if needed, 8 to 10 weeks for a quicker recovery. Plan support stack upgrades based on prior sides, okay? Now, common mistakes in cycle planning: stacking too many compounds early. You want to stick to 2 to 3 compounds max for the initial part of that blast, okay? So if you have, let's say, you're taking like 5 to 6 compounds. This is for intermediate/advanced users if you're new, low dose test. But if you are planning to take a cycle and you have like 5 to 6 compounds in that blast, separate it out, okay? Do not just take everything at once. That's how you run into massive sides. Start low Get your body used to the test only, the Anavar, and then slowly but surely introduce the mast, the fucking low dose trend. If you're going to take that shit, slowly introduce it into that cycle. Do not just take it up front. You need to have a specific plan to ramp up, to peak, and to ramp down and get off. It's not just take fucking a gram of test, a gram of trend, mass, Anavar in the beginning. That's how you run into crazy ass sides and fluctuations. It has to be a slow ramp up, a peak, and a ramp down, and then you come off and you cruise. That's how you push this shit effectively. Ignoring blood work intervals is another massive problem. Test pre, mid, and post every cycle. You always want to do this at the bare minimum. Okay, you don't want to just get your bloods done randomly. You want a set schedule that you always follow with every cycle. It's how you get the most accurate data. Just build habits, build your right habits to do this consistently, and you will be good. Chasing endless gains. If you accept plateaus as part of progression, that's going to cause issues, okay? You want to make sure you're not hitting plateaus. If you do hit plateaus, you want it marked down. You want to know how to bypass that shit and keep progressing. You don't just want to accept plateaus. It's not a part of progressing. You want to always see progression. Now, slowing down the progression is part of the game. When you PCT, when you come off, you of course are not going to have that consistent uptrend. But you can't just accept if you're not seeing gains. You can't accept that as part of the progress. You want to consistently see progress. You hop on a blast, get your progress, come off, quick consolidation, okay, and then you rebound, hop back on. It should be a consistent uptrend, but there are going to be parts where you slow down, but you do not just want to plateau. That's you don't want to get used to doing that shit, okay? Now, poor PCT carryover, weak recovery leads to forced longer off times, another massive mistake, right? And lifestyle sabotage as well. Inconsistent diet or sleep derails planning. This is why habits are so important. Now, these two are very common, but I do want you to screenshot this. It's very, very important. Fuck, here we go. Now, long-term cycling framework. So you want an annual plan. You want to map your cycles around your goals, your off seasons, and your life. You should be zooming out for the long term, okay? You don't just, again, want to live in that moment. That's why it's so important to have a professional on your side with this shit to help guide you through the long-term goal. Are you just trying to hop on, hop off? What is your goal physique? You want to look like fucking Arnold? Well, this is going to take a few years. This might take 2 to 3 years to achieve a physique similar to this. Of course, heavily dependent on genetics, right? And Arnold is a goddamn specimen, but if you want a physique like this, it will take time. You need to have an annual plan set up. You can't just be living in the moment with this shit, okay? It's a chess game. Zoom out, think about things before they happen, and that's how you're going to make really good decisions here. Cruise phases if advanced, low dose tests for maintenance. You want to have an exit strategy as well. Plan eventual off periods or TRT if needed, of course. You need to have your exit strategy in place before you even hop on. It's got to be an exit plan before you start the cycle. I see this so many times where people hop on, they just plan for the cycle, okay? The pre, mid, and post blast bloods. They're like, okay, I'm going to do that. But they don't have a specific plan for coming off. And then the time comes where you got to come off. There's no plan set. So you wing that shit and then it fails, okay? You have to have a plan set in advance. You want to track everything. Create a cycle journal for patterns over years. Track everything. Data driven. It's how you win. Sustainability metric as well. Consistent health markers and progress year over year, okay? Next up here for the last slide is when to extend off. Subpar blood work. This will delay until all values normalize. So if your bloods are not back to normal, as I keep mentioning, it's going to delay the time that you hop back on until everything's back to normal. Everything has to be in range. You can't rush into shit if your bloods are not looking good. Your bloods have to be in fucking range or else you're going to push the chances of running into long-term consequences a lot. It's going to multiply, okay? The risk will multiply. Life changes as well. Prioritize family, career, or health issues. You always have to prioritize this. Diminishing returns. If your gains drop 15% from prior cycle, 50% from prior cycle, then there's an issue, okay? If you're running into diminishing returns, you need to step back, look at what's going wrong based on your data, and fix it. Side effect history as well. Add 4 to 8 weeks for organ recovery, okay? Everyone's going to be genetically prone to shit. Some people will have liver issues, kidney issues. Some people will have more risk to blood clots, more cholesterol problems. You want to look at this and you want to add specific time to get your body back up into that range dependent on what you're running into, okay? Professional review of recovery stalls beyond guidelines, very important. Now that section is going to be quick as well. We got one section left. I am trying to pump these out, But the last section is going to be long-term health, protecting your heart, kidneys, fertility, and managing blood work before we kill off this series. Now, look, guys, when it comes to this part 19 for your next cycle, it comes down to the same goddamn points over and over again. Just being data driven, knowing what to do, zooming out, and planning this shit in advance. If you have the data in front of you, you will win. Okay, if you're gonna take away any point from the sector, just be data driven. As long as you are doing everything and you are tracking everything, you literally can't lose. You might run into short-term sides, but you legit cannot lose in the long term if you are knowing and understanding everything that's happening in that given moment in time. You won't know if you don't track this shit in the future. If you're trying to push another blast, you're not going to understand. All this shit's going to zoom out of your goddamn head. You might understand in the moment, but you're going to forget. That's the human brain, okay? You need to have everything tracked, and this is how you win, bro. This is how you fucking win. So if you guys liked, like and subscribe, comment if you have any questions. I still respond to all comments, and I will respond to your questions in the comments of this video. We're going to get back tomorrow with the last part of the boot camp, part 20. And we're going to kill this shit off. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I will see you guys in the next one. Peace.